Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here in Depictions Media Radio. Of course, I'm your host, Michael Clogs. And housing. Safe, affordable housing, it should be a basic human right for those who absolutely want it and need it. Maybe it goes beyond that. Maybe, just the idea that we should be able to have our own space, be able to afford our own space, and the housing market not be such a commodity that in supporting those who may be just out there just trying to make a profit on it. There's some people out there, when they sell their home because they want to upgrade and want to get something that suits their needs a little better, or maybe they want to downgrade to do the same exact thing. And they're not looking to price gouge people. There are people who actually invest in properties and rent those same properties back out again, looking to, hey, I want to make a little money, but I also want to help people live. There's nothing wrong with that, and that is actually admirable. But that's not what we're seeing out there. We're seeing developers that are simply trying to take advantage of and squeeze is every last nickel out of the market they can. And some of the rules need to change around that. Some of the rules need to change so that inflation on pricing of housing hits a cap, and so that people can afford to buy a home if they want, rent a home if they want. The average rental in British Columbia, and this is offset because we have some $4,000 a month rental properties in the Lower Mainland here in British Columbia, that offsets what British Columbia is actually seeing. But imagine this, that the average rental is just under $2,300 a month, and the average income per hour, if we look at the minimum wage, is just over $15 an hour. It doesn't match up well. Even if it's say we have a home with two working people living in it, it doesn't add up. The expense for housing is far greater than what people can afford to pay. Anyway, so it brings us to announcements from David Eby, the new Premier of British Columbia, and he's going to announce some rules and some changes that he's trying to put in place so that the BC NDP government can tackle the housing crisis and help people be able to live comfortably in their homes.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning to talk about the important issue of housing. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we're on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. And I would also like to begin by sharing that I understand that there is a very serious police-involved incident in Prince Rupert this morning that sounds incredibly troubling, and that our thoughts and our certainly our hearts go out to everybody affected by that incident this morning. And we have limited details right now, but certainly all British Columbians are thinking of the people of Prince Rupert right now. I'm joined this morning by Murray Rankin, the Minister for Housing, among other important titles, Attorney General, Minister for Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. The new Mayor of Victoria, Marianne Alto, has joined us this morning. And Omama Shoaib has joined us as well. She is a nurse and a new arrival to Victoria from Alberta. And we're really glad to have her here. She's going to share a little bit of her experience with us today. We are at the legislature today, but a short walk away down the street in almost all directions, you'll find busy construction sites of housing being built. For example, 1025 Johnson Street. It's opening soon. It has 130 units of affordable housing built on top of a new community fire hall. It's an example of the kind of housing we need across the province of British Columbia right now. We are seeing a remarkable thing here in British Columbia, which is that people are coming to this province in record numbers. We had more than 100,000 people move to BC last year, and our housing supply is not keeping up. Now, British Columbians rightly have a vision of a province where when you're ready to, you can move out of your parents' house and start your life, that you can start a family, that you can move from renting potentially to even owning your own place, moving up the property ladder. And it's a vision that feels out of reach for far too many British Columbians because of the pressure in our housing market right now. Now, we've addressed important issues of speculation in our housing market with the speculation and vacancy tax, making sure that empty homes are not used as investments, but instead provide housing for people in our province. 20,000 homes brought back onto the market through that initiative. We have 36,000 new affordable homes that are either under construction or completed right now across the province. BC Housing, one of the largest residential housing developers in North America, building affordable housing. We need homes for people who keep our province running, for the bus drivers, the teachers, the construction workers, and so many more. But with that record population I was talking about, we need to respond quickly. We can't slow down. And so that's why I'm excited to be announcing two incredibly important housing bills to make sure that we can deliver the housing that all British Columbians need. These bills focus on the immediate term, making sure that we're not leaving any housing on the table when families and individuals are searching for housing, that every housing unit is used to its maximum potential. And the other focused on the medium to long term, making sure that we're working with municipalities to deliver the housing that British Columbians need. First, in relation to strata rules. It is simply unacceptable that a British Columbian who is searching Craigslist for a place to rent can't find a home, and somebody who owns a condo is not permitted to rent that home to that individual. It is equally unacceptable that a young couple that lives in a condo and decides to start a family has to start searching for a new home because that strata has a rule that everybody who lives in the unit has to be 19 years of age or older. Responding to the housing crisis means making sure that housing units that are available to be rented are actually rented and provide housing to British Columbians. Responding to the housing crisis means not forcing people to move simply because they decide to start a family. The first bill that was introduced in the legislature will end those rental restrictions in about 300,000 units across the province. Our data from the speculation and vacancy tax indicates that in speculation and vacancy tax areas, there are 2,000 900 units where owners made an application for an exemption from the tax because they were not permitted to rent their vacant home. We need to bring those homes onto the market for British Columbians to rent. I was contacted in my previous role as housing minister by a couple that was pregnant, they were expecting a child, and they could not believe that the law in British Columbia would allow for them to be evicted from their home because they decided to start a family, which is why we're eliminating that rule. But there are two clear authorities for stratas that I want to make sure British Columbians understand will be maintained. First of all, these changes will have no effect on seniors-only housing. That 55-plus restriction will continue in seniors' housing. Seniors need housing in our province, and that rule makes sense to British Columbians. The second is strata rules around short-term rentals or Airbnb rentals. Stratas will still be able to restrict short-term rentals in their buildings, and in fact, in legislative sessions to come, we'll be introducing additional restrictions allowing municipalities to more closely regulate short-term rentals. The second bill sets out a framework for how the province is going to work with cities to respond to this massive spike in our population, to make sure that we see housing as essential infrastructure. Housing is a key role delivering housing is a key role for municipalities, and they need the support of the province to achieve the numbers that we need in British Columbia. This framework sets out a mutually agreed target to hit in terms of the kind of housing that municipalities already know they need because of housing needs studies that we've supported them to do. It makes sure that the province is working with cities to actually deliver the housing that we all know we need, and we do so in partnership. And it also puts teeth into those housing needs studies. It allows municipalities to speak to their residents and say, we need to deliver this housing. It is an expectation of the province. And it allows the province to support cities working with the federal government to make sure they have everything they need to deliver this housing. I'm incredibly excited about this legislation. And with that, I would like to welcome up Minister Murray Rankin to share a few remarks about these bills. And I'd certainly like to express my appreciation to him for introducing those bills in the legislature. Mr. Rankin.
Good morning. Thank you, Premier. I too would like to acknowledge, firstly, that we are gathered in the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. For too long, the housing crisis has been pricing British Columbians out of the market, denying them opportunities to get ahead. For too many people, families, seniors, and young people, they've been unable to find an affordable home to rent or to own, and they've been forced to leave the communities that they call home. The crisis is hurting people, and ultimately it's hurting our economy, and it's unacceptable. That's why, in Budget 2018, we launched Homes for BC, government's housing plan, and the largest investment in housing in the history of this province, $7 billion over 10 years. Through this plan, we're building homes that people need and improving security for renters as well. Under our government, more than 36,000 new affordable homes are completed or underway in over 100 communities in every part of this province. We're also moderating housing prices by increasing supply, curbing speculative demand, and tackling fraud and money laundering in the real estate market. Yet despite these actions, it's no secret to anyone that we're in a housing crisis. Simply put, supply has not kept up with the demand. Across BC and around the world, costs have been increasing, especially when it comes to housing, making it hard for people to find suitable homes. And we know BC has experienced record population growth, so we need more housing, now more than ever before. The province cannot increase housing in isolation, however. Municipalities are critical partners in addressing these challenges, and they are essential in building healthy communities. Over the past couple of years, we've seen some great examples of hard work by some municipalities to streamline processes and open houses quickly. Places like right here in Victoria, also in Kamloops, North Vancouver, and Langley, great examples. Other municipalities, however, are struggling to approve enough housing, mainly because they're working with outdated processes and cumbersome oversight policies that prevent them from adequately responding to this enormous demand. Rejecting affordable housing processes because of concerns over parking lot designs, for example, or shadow bans is not acceptable to British Columbians in a crisis like we're facing. We believe the best way forward is to work together with municipalities to address this crisis and act urgently to deliver the right type of housing at the right place at the right time. That's why today we're taking action to deliver more good homes for people. First, we're introducing bold new legislation to speed up housing development and get new homes built faster. The Housing Supply Act will allow government to set housing targets in those municipalities with the greatest need and the highest projected growth. Our aim with this legislation is to make it easier for municipalities to approve housing. This legislation will allow us to do that in several important ways. First, it enables the minister responsible for housing to review the housing needs reports already produced by municipalities to ensure that they accurately forecast housing needs in those communities. Second, the bill gives the province authority to work with a specified municipality based on that need, including setting targets for rental housing, for affordable housing, for social housing. Municipalities are our partners in addressing this crisis, and we will continue to honor and respect their autonomy and the knowledge that they have of their communities. Together, we'll set timelines to achieve targets and monitor progress to ensure that we're on schedule. The targets will be phased in at the municipal level, not on a regional basis or a provincial level, once the Act is brought into force in early 2023. We'll be starting with 8 to 10 municipalities with the greatest need and the highest projected growth. This legislation will help us create more housing where it's needed most. And it'll provide a diversity of housing options so British Columbians can stay in their communities so their housing needs are met. Another option for many people, of course, is rental. BC has more renters per capita than any part of Canada, but vacancy rates are extremely low. That's why we're introducing amendments today to the Strata Property Act to expand housing options for strata owners, prospective buyers, and renters in a tight housing market. Once passed, these amendments will end strata rental restrictions, and that will be effective immediately on passage of that law. In exceptional cases where there are concerns about a problem renter, for example, the residential tenancy branch guidelines have been updated to state that a strata corporation can issue a notice to end a tenancy and apply to the residential tenancy branch for dispute resolution in place of the landlord. In addition, we're limiting age restriction bylaws to age 55 and over in strata housing. These amendments will open up more rental and home ownership options for people at a time when they're needing it more than ever. Strata rules that ban families with children from living in a home or stop people from renting out their condo that they own, they're no longer acceptable in a housing crisis. So by way of conclusion, these actions are part of our work to increase housing supply in BC. And they pave the way for a more affordable, livable province. There's more work to do to ensure everyone in BC has access to the houses that they need. And you'll see more action from our government on this front as we continue to tackle the housing crisis head-on by taking bold new steps as we have today. For now, I'd like to thank everyone who's contributed to making this important legislation a reality. Premier David Eby, who spearheaded much of this work during his time as minister responsible for housing. The municipalities and Indigenous peoples who provided feedback on these collaborative new measures. and staff from the Ministry of the Attorney General who have supported the engagement and drafted this legislation. I thank them sincerely for all their great work. Without their contributions, this historic legislation would simply not have been possible. I'd now like to welcome to the stage Omama Shoaib to talk about how actions will help people like her. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Omama Shoaib. I moved here from Alberta about a year and a half ago, and I work as a harm reduction nurse in downtown Victoria. When I moved here, I was very excited to start my new career and my job in British Columbia. What I didn't expect was to be hamstrung because I could not find a place to live. It was a full-time job trying to find an option for myself, and housing was just very difficult to come by. And it's a job that I couldn't do because I was packing up my life in Alberta. There was a point where I thought I might have to decline my job offer, which is just such an awful thought. But eventually I was able to find a rental for myself. I just couldn't help but think of all the people that are less fortunate than I am, people that are living with disabilities, people that are out of work, those that are living in precariously housed, and those that are living with mental health and substance use challenges. It really shouldn't be this hard. That's why I think the initiatives taken by the BC government today are a step in the right direction. I think that it's easier for people to see and pursue their dreams here. If they would want to come here, they're able to think that, yeah, I can find housing here. I think these steps taken today are going to open up the housing market and make more breathing room in the housing market for everyone, and make it easier for people like myself, among others. I'm positive the steps taken today are for people like myself, and I'm hopeful for what the growth may look like for homeowners and renters alike. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Marianne also.
Thank you for the stool as well. Thank you, Omama. I wanted to just start actually by thanking you for your service, in particular for your commitment to being a nurse. Good heavens, we need so many more of you. Thanks for coming today. I would also like to start by acknowledging that we're gathered here in the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Always grateful for their generosity in allowing us to be here. And thank you, Premier Eby and Minister, for your work. I really want to say that as Mayor of Victoria, I really welcome this legislation today. I welcome the Premier's introduction of it, the way he's done it inclusively, and the details that will be shared or have been shared with you already. This is a remarkable day for us municipally around what we can do to create additional housing. I also want to thank them for including Victoria in this announcement today. I think that we have shown that we have some remarkably progressive policies already, but we look forward to joining the province in more. This Housing Supply Act will give our city and other municipalities another critically important tool to create homes for our current and future residents, and to house the people who now call Victoria home and who want to call Victoria home their place too. And the City of Victoria has already taken a number of very important steps to simplify building processes and to accelerate the building of affordable housing. But we can't do enough of it fast enough alone. We need the province to support and push us to push all local governments to make building more and more affordable homes in every neighbourhood, in every municipality across BC. I'm confident that my new council will welcome the provincial government's leadership in setting expectations and benchmarks for increasing the availability and affordability of homes for Victorians. And I will urge my colleagues in local government across the region to do the same. The demand for homes across the spectrum of affordability is critical in all of our municipalities across the Capital Regional District and across British Columbia. And I really hope that local leaders across BC will embrace the opportunity to be guided by this legislation so that we can create more housing for all of our residents. Local and provincial governments must work together to fulfill our commitments to build the housing that people in our cities deserve and want and need across the affordability spectrum. Premier, I look forward to working with you on this important file. I urge my colleagues across BC to do the same, and I know that we can meet your expectations for additional affordable housing because we must meet those expectations because they are the expectations of our residents and our residents-to-be. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Your Worship, very much for those comments. At this point, I'd like to invite any questions from the media. If you have a question for someone other than me, just let me know and we'll get that person up to the podium.
Thank you very much. A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue for the opportunity to ask a question and a follow-up. We will be starting here in the room. I see reporters are already queued behind the mic. First question comes from Richard Zussman, Global News.
Premier, are there certain municipalities that you are targeting here that have not kept up with what their communities need? And can you speak about what specific powers the housing minister will have if those municipalities, after an assessment is done, does not move forward with those housing? Is there a time frame they have or tools the province will use?
Thanks, Richard. This bill is not targeted at any particular municipality. It's targeted at the relationship that the province has with cities and the demands that every British Columbian has, the reasonable belief that we will work together to address the housing crisis by building the housing that's needed. With the population growth that we're seeing in British Columbia, the demand for housing has never been higher. And the only way that we're going to be able to address that is for the province to accept our responsibility around our own permit times, around providing infrastructure supports for cities, funds for fast-growing cities, for amenities, for new neighbours. That's our job. And we also have to work with cities to make sure that they're delivering on their part, that they're making sure their cities work for everybody and that there's housing for folks who need it, who are looking right now. And so that's what it's really aimed at. It's about the relationship between the province and the cities on this essential infrastructure for every British Columbian that's looking for a decent home. The second component of your question, this bill sets out very clear benchmarks and expectations both on the part of the province and on the part of the cities that we need to meet, that we have to work together to set these targets, that we have to work together to identify why targets aren't being hit and to address those issues. And I'm happy to say the federal government is also on side with this. They have their federal accelerator fund, all aimed at one very straightforward thing, making sure that the homes are built so that people who are out there looking for a place to live for themselves, for their family, are able to find it.
Follow-up, Richard?
When you announced your housing plan during the short-lived NDP leadership campaign, you laid out a few different things. The big pieces were a flipping tax and the secondary suite legalization. Neither of those things appear today. Are those too complicated? Are they still coming? And I know I asked about this on Friday, but we're talking housing. You're also looking at a renter's rebate that hasn't been rolled out. Are you saving all of these things for before an election?
So legislation like this doesn't show up overnight. This is the product of extensive work with key community stakeholders like municipal governments, like home builders, like British Columbians, making sure that it will be effective. We don't want to do half measures that aren't going to work. We want pieces in place that are going to deliver housing that people can see, that they can rent, that they can buy, that they can actually afford. That is the goal that we have here at the provincial government level, and cities are an essential partner in that. There are a number of initiatives that our government needs to take around housing. This is not the end, nor is it the beginning. We've done a lot of work. This is one more piece in our journey to deliver affordable housing to British Columbians, and British Columbians will see more from us on this pressing issue for so many people in our province.
Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Premier. This talks about, in the briefing we're told, about 300,000 strata units that might be freed up because of these changes. This seems like the most immediate change, but do you have an idea of how many units would actually come on the market? Because it doesn't mean just because you've changed it that they would automatically change hands.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to clarify, Justine. So the best estimate that staff have been able to come up with is that there are about 300,000 condo units across the province that are covered by rental bans currently. These are buildings that would have been built before 2010, when the rules changed and new strata buildings were no longer allowed to put rental restrictions in place. So of that pool of 300,000 condos, we don't know how many will be up for rent. The best number that we can offer is that we know that 2,900 people, 2,900 units, there were applications under the speculation and vacancy tax saying, look, I haven't rented out my condo, but I can't because there's a rental ban in the building. And by definition, the speculation and vacancy tax is an additional home that is vacant. And so our hope is that those homes will quickly come onto the market to be rented. I've met with many people who want to rent homes. I've met with many people who want to make that housing available to rent out that condo that is under a rental ban currently. We need those people to come together. It makes no sense that people are searching for housing and people want to rent housing, but there's a strata rule that prevents that from happening. It hasn't been acceptable in new buildings since 2010, and in a housing crisis, we need to open up that housing right away.
Follow-up?
Suggestion here is that a local government shouldn't be able to block a density application based on concerns, for example, about parking. I'm just wondering, are there scenarios where a local government would be able to legitimately say no to density?
What we're hoping to do with this legislation is to change the conversation. So it's not project by project where a series of small decisions results in the problem that we're facing of not enough housing for people that are looking for a place to live. Instead, that we're looking at the big picture. How much housing do we need? And then working with cities about how that target is going to be hit. Cities have an important role. Where is the housing going to be? What is it going to look like? How is it going to mix in with the rest of the community? But the discussion can't anymore be about whether or not that housing goes ahead. We are desperate for the housing in the province. We've seen massive increases in our population here. People need a place to rent, they need a place to buy, and they can't rent or buy if the housing's never been built. So we're counting on cities to be good partners in this, and I believe they will be, and I can assure municipal leaders that we'll be good partners. The federal government is stepping up with their accelerator program. All of us together working to address the housing crisis is how we're going to deliver for those folks who are looking for housing right now.
Next question, Rob Shaw, Check News.
Premier, could you be very specific in what orders you see the housing minister using here? I'm still struggling to understand. A municipality blows its housing needs targets. Can you order them to approve a housing project they've rejected? Can you order them to rezone an entire area for up density without a public hearing? Like, what specifically could you do in this situation? What are you planning to do with those orders?
Thanks. This legislation, to my mind, sets out a framework for cooperation, a framework for negotiation, and working together to deliver for British Columbians. And it will be paired with a fund to support fast-growing cities that are hitting their targets to make sure that they have the amenities, that they have the infrastructure to make communities livable for the people that live in those cities. And so that cooperative piece is really important to me. But there is a portion of the bill that speaks about what happens when we can't reach agreement, what happens when we can't get to the place of recognizing that housing is essential infrastructure that every municipality and the province needs to be a part of delivering. And in that situation, it creates a possibility of an advisor going into the municipality to identify what the issues are that are preventing that municipality from hitting the targets, and that advisor can provide a number of recommendations to government, that a particular project be approved, that a particular zoning be put in place, that some other kind of response that will ensure the housing is delivered gets made. It does create the ability for the Executive Council, for Cabinet to make an order, ultimately, for a city to do any one of these things, to approve a building, to rezone an area, and so on. But my hope is that we never have to use that. That is not what this bill is about. This bill is about building that framework so we never get to that place. But it does have teeth, and it needs to have teeth to make sure that we're hitting these goals. And I want to assure municipal leaders that I hold the province to the same standard. We need to do better on permits. We need to provide support to cities, and we will do so.
Follow-up?
Side of the housing needs assessment report, the advisor that you just mentioned appointing, and the recommendations that are made. Is your government going to intervene on projects? Like, for example, your Attorney General mentioned when shadows or parking cause a project to be rejected, which has happened in Oak Bay. Will you intervene and approve over top of a municipality a project without waiting for the housing needs assessment and the advisor and the recommendations? Or do you need that process to happen? The bill sets out a series of steps that need to be taken.
and you could see them as a series of escalating interventions. We don't go immediately to stepping into a community and saying, you must approve this, you must approve that. There are a series of cooperative steps, and the reason why the bill is built in that way is that's our intention. Our intention is to work cooperatively, not to force a city that's unable to meet the goal because of some issue that's beyond their control. If there's an issue that's beyond their control, let's identify it, let's address it together. Whatever it is, because we have to have the shared goal of delivering housing for British Columbians who need that housing. And so this sets out the framework so that by the time we get to the end, it's absolutely clear what the issue is and the province needs to step in. So there's no confusion about that. But it sets out a series of cooperative steps before it gets to that point, which is absolutely important in my mind, that the province and the cities are working together for people looking for housing right now.
Next question, Rob Buffum, CTV Vancouver Island.
Good morning, Premier. When you came out with your housing plan back in September, another item of it was that you were going to eliminate the rule whereby single-family homes would exist in a spot without being able to, basically you said 3 units could go where a single-family home had been. That's conspicuously absent from this plan. Victoria had a missing middle project which has not gone ahead yet. Why haven't you included the 3 units for one as part of this policy, given how dire this crisis is?
I set out some proposals for British Columbia in a leadership campaign. I remain committed to those. But there's work that has to happen on many of those proposals around the BC Builds proposal, around the Rental Housing Preservation Fund, around allowing people to build 3 units on an existing footprint. These are all critical pieces that need to be delivered, but we're going to go through the process and work through with key stakeholders to make sure that any interventions we make, whether those or others, actually work, and that they will deliver housing for British Columbians and they'll be effective for what we want. And so British Columbians should see this announcement as a continuation of our work on housing, and they will see us accelerating our work on housing going forward with many different proposals that I'm really excited about.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about people who are living on the street. For example, in Victoria, there was a woman who died last week when her tent caught on fire. As I understand today's announcement, it's primarily middle or long-term projects or people who might want to get into a strata. Why is there nothing in this announcement that relates to homeless people on the street and providing for them?
So this announcement is primarily aimed at middle-income housing, and it's important to see the connection between middle-income housing and the homelessness that we see in communities. Because of our population growth, middle-income people are bidding up the rents in housing that previously they never would have considered moving to. And then that is displacing people from those basement suites, from those older rental buildings, into homelessness. So we're moving upstream with this initiative to make sure that we're delivering those middle-income homes, and people will see more of this, homes that people can actually afford to rent or potentially buy. And also, though, there is a component of this bill that does address issues around supportive housing, around shelters and so on. It is possible in the targets to have specific targets for specific types of housing. So saying to a city, look, we really need you to step up. You've got an encampment. We need to have an emergency shelter in your community. We need to have supportive housing. It's part of the targets for you, is part of this legislation as well.
Next question, Binder Sachin, CTV.
Hi, Premier. We've been hearing from the Condo Homeowners Association that when it comes to those pre-2010 buildings, 99% are owner-occupied. And it seems like the numbers you've laid out here, 300,000 units covered by the ban and about 3,000 will be freed up, kind of falls in line with those numbers. And what they're saying would make a bigger difference in freeing up rentals would be to ban short-term rentals in areas where there is the greatest need. So you talk about taking bold action. Why not ban short-term rentals now?
So a couple of pieces, accepting their numbers, 1% of 300,000 is 3,000 units of housing that will be open for rental. We are in a housing crisis. 3,000 new rental units coming online for British Columbians. Someone searching Craigslist looking for that place to rent. It's just not acceptable that someone who wants to rent a place and someone who wants to rent to them, that they're being prevented from providing housing by a strata rule. And so I understand that this is a shift, that this is a change. We will make sure that people who live in strata buildings maintain their quality of life. Stratas can appear at the residential tenancy branch to deal with any tenancy issues and recover those costs from an absentee unit owner. We'll make sure that that's in place. But we just can't have a situation where we're leaving housing on the table while people are looking for a place to rent. And it's not either or. I accept 100% that we need to do more on short-term rentals, and in particular, supporting municipalities to find that balance. There are some municipalities that rely on short-term rentals as part of their tourism strategy, but they also need those rental units for tourism workers. So when you have a community like Tofino, like Whistler, where they're trying to find that balance between these things, providing them with the tools so that they can regulate short-term rentals effectively is a critical priority for us, and you'll see legislation about that in the sessions to come. This is about today, about making housing available that's there, that's sitting, that's waiting to be rented while people are desperate for housing.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, there have been calls to actually replace a single-family home with 6 units instead of 3, allowing universities to borrow funds so they can actually build housing. Some people have been calling for a ban on outright ownership of foreign individuals owning homes here in BC. And I'm just wondering, going forward, when you're talking about bold action, are those additional measures something that you would be open to? And also, on another note, are you expecting any legal challenges with this?
I think that British Columbians should expect to see one thing from our government, which is that we will be completely focused on ensuring that British Columbians have a chance to find a place that they can actually afford to rent and to buy. And we will be focused on that to deliver. And there are a number of mechanisms that we can use. These are just 2 today that we're announcing, and there is more to come. But I know that's a priority for British Columbians. I heard from them. I heard from people desperate for housing. I heard from people who want to move out from mom and dad's place. I heard from seniors that are grappling with high rents. I've heard from so many people who are trying to hire workers and they can't because the workers that they give job offers to can't find housing in the community where the job is. So we need to respond to this for our economy. We need to respond to this for families, for seniors, for all British Columbians. We'll be focused on that. And we're not taking any tools off the table when it comes to that. These are significant steps today. A new relationship between cities and the province in how we're going to deliver housing, opening up what we believe to be potentially thousands of units of housing for rent that are currently barred from being rented by strata rules. So we're willing to look at anything to make sure we're addressing the housing crisis, and it is a big priority for our government.
Next question, Alec Lazenby, BC Today.
Hello, Premier. So there are some instances in the province where the regional district creates housing needs supply that individual municipalities may disagree with. So, for example, say, take CRD and Colwood or Langford. What do you say to those municipalities, and how will you work with them to create housing, but also take into consideration their concerns? Because I know housing needs supply is a large part of this new legislation, but in some instances it's not put together by the individual municipalities, and there might not be complete consensus on it.
So built into the bill is a process where the province must consult with the municipality in setting the target and must consider the information that is provided by the municipality about what their situation is. The benefit of this is that we're going to be able to identify what the municipality sees as barriers to delivering the housing that people need. And it'll allow us to address those issues so that the targets can be hit. It is a structured conversation around a specific target and how we're going to deliver it with the end effect that people will get the housing that they need. Municipalities should not think that we're just going to come in with a target and impose it on them without discussion. It will be a cooperative approach to set a target that we both agree as best as possible, makes sense, and a conversation about how we're going to hit that target, and when cities fall short, how we're going to get them to hit that target, because we need that housing for people who are looking for it.
2018, your government came up with a plan for 114,000 new units over 10 years. In the presentation, the tech briefing earlier today, it said 36,000 units had been completed or underway. Do you have specific figures for how many have been completed, how many are underway, and how we can expect that plan to proceed moving forward.
Sure, Alec, I'll get the latest updated numbers to you. But yes, we are about a third of the way through our commitment on those numbers. There were some bills that have been introduced that are going to be central to us hitting that target around transit-oriented development, where TransLink, for example, where the Ministry of Transportation can purchase land around new transit stations, rapid transit stations, for building housing that people can actually afford, that's close to a SkyTrain line, close to a rapid bus station. All of these are parts of our work to hit that target. We've got lots more work to do, but we're well on our way. And happily, as you heard today, we have municipal partners who are ready to go, and the federal government wants to work with us on this as well.
Mira Bain, CBC.
Good morning, Premier. So in terms of targets for municipalities, how long do municipalities have to take action before they're considered non-compliant?
So these are, as I understand it, going to be annual housing targets. And our expectation is to have regulations in place early next year. And the goal here is to have that structured conversation throughout that period to make sure that municipalities are on track, and if they're starting to lose ground, that we're supporting them to address the issues that they face. And I know that part of this challenge can be provincial permit times, and I know that some of this challenge can be infrastructure, that the province has a role to play here too. So over that time period, we'll be working together, and if they say, look, we need increased sewage capacity, or we need to address the fact that amenities are needed in this community for us to be able to deliver this housing, that conversation can actually take place. So while it is an annual target, it won't just be at the year end. The goal is that we're working together throughout the year to deliver those targets.
Follow-up?
In terms of the targets and some of the legislation that you're introducing today, why didn't you bring in some of these bills earlier when you were housing minister?
So I'm really excited that these were introduced in the legislature today. These bills didn't show up overnight. They're product of extensive work of engagement and consultation with key stakeholders, with home builders, with municipalities. And this work did start when I was housing minister, and it's being delivered by Housing Minister Murray Rankin. Government remains committed to the issue of housing, and British Columbians will see a real emphasis on housing going forward under my leadership.
Next question, Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Further to Binder's question about the legal challenge, some mayors who reacted to the housing platform released in September said they were concerned about the ability to overrule their land use laws. So that being said, are you concerned about municipalities challenging this in court?
I would be really disappointed if the reaction were anything other than what I imagine everyone's reaction is, which is to the housing crisis, which is we need to build housing urgently for British Columbians. I can't imagine a local government that just went through the municipal elections talking to people in their communities that didn't hear about the issue of housing. Communities small and large in every part of our province. I was across the province, and housing regularly topped the list for people of issues they were concerned about. Are my kids going to be able to afford to live in this community? I need supportive housing I need housing that's appropriate for my aging parents. I'm wanting to leave my parents' house and start my life, and I can't afford to do it. I can't find a place to rent. These are the issues that are front of mind for British Columbians. I know municipal leaders would have heard about it. I certainly hope that we spend our time working together on how to hit those targets instead of anything else, frankly.
And we have time for Katie's follow-up today. Katie, last question, your follow-up, please.
Yeah, there's a new this morning. BC government lawyers want the right to unionize. I mean, you were a longtime government lawyer. What are your thoughts on that?
The government, of course, supports the rights of people to organize, and I'm sure I'll hear more about that soon.
Okay, so new rules for stratas and people. who have been prohibited by different strata rules in that they weren't able to rent out their homes or their condos to people who actually need it in order to do what is right in the community. Make sure that everybody has an appropriate amount of housing. So I do know of a few stratas that are actually in the area in which we live and broadcast that have rules that say you cannot rent it out. That you either have to sell it, or in some of those rules they even state that because of age restrictions and things like that, that you can't even, say, rent it out to a niece, nephew, son, or daughter in order to give them an appropriate start. So it's good to hear that some of these rules are going to be changed, and it's going to that will actually have an effect on the housing market. Some of the mentions of tearing down some of the old houses and then building them with these newer, smaller townhouses, most of those things are being built in ways that the developer itself makes a whole bunch of profit, but it isn't affordable to the average person. And some of those things need to be changed so that the housing market actually reflects the people in the area, that it reflects their incomes and reflects what it is that they can actually pay. And it shouldn't be cheaped out either. And that it's appropriate, it's nice, it's like people want a nice home. And it should be a human right to have that nice home. Okay, so thank you for listening. And I ask you, send letters, send the message, emails, whatever it takes. Send that message to our MLAs, back to the Premier. Tell them what we need to see in our communities so that our communities are safe, affordable, and wonderful to live in. So I do ask you at this time to go find that subscribe button. Click on that subscribe button so that you will get continued updates from Depictions Media and all of our broadcast partners as we continue forth in our mission to bring some love and happiness to our world, one podcast at a time. So, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.